Hello, this is Professor Hale, your teacher for Philosophy 100, General Logic, this semester. This will be the first video of the semester in which I go over answers to some of the practice problems from your book with you. The videos that I'll be posting are not intended as lectures, and they certainly are not intended to be substitutes for you doing the assigned reading. In fact, before you watch this particular video, in which I'm going to go through answers to some of the problems in Practice Problem Set 1-1, I hope that you will have already read the material assigned in Chapter 1 up to the point where Practice Problem Set 1-1 begins. I'm not going to go through all of these problems with you. You have answers to all of the practice problems towards the end of Chapter 1. Now, of course, as I realize, looking at the answers doesn't show you the thought process that was used to arrive at the answers. And that's why I've picked a few problems from Practice Problem Set 1-1 to go through with you in this video. I hope that watching this will help you then go back to the practice problem set and understand how to figure out the answers to the problems that I do not cover in this video. Okay, in this particular practice problem set, we are simply identifying the letter that is in the position where the conclusion of the argument would be. In doing this, we're drawing on understanding some commonly used conclusion introducers and some commonly used premise introducers. In box 1A in Chapter 1, I made a list for you of some of the more commonly used conclusion introducers, and in box 1B, you have a list of some of the more commonly used premise introducers. Neither of those boxes is exhaustive. By that I mean they don't contain each and every conclusion introducer or premise introducer that could possibly be used in the English language. I don't think I could come up with lists that complete. But if you're familiar with the introducers in these boxes, I think you will be in very good shape. All right, let's turn now to some of these problems, starting with number 1. I'm using B/C simply as an abbreviation for the word because. Well, the word because is a premise introducer. In fact, I think of the word because as a model or paradigm of a premise introducer. So that tells us that the statement that would be in the position where the letter B is has to be a premise. It comes right after a word that introduces a premise. So it's a premise. By process of elimination, then, the statement in the A position, A as in apple, must be the conclusion in number 1. Turning now to number 3, our key word is since. The word since and the word because function exactly like one another when it comes to introducing parts of arguments. They are premise introducers. So in number 3, A is the premise by process of elimination. The only thing left there to be the conclusion is the statement in the other position, that is indicated by the letter B as in boy. Notice, by the way, that in number 1, the conclusion was at the start. In number 3, the conclusion was at the end. There is no rule about where in an argument a conclusion is. It might be at the start, it might be at the end, and in an argument with multiple premises, it might be in the middle. We actually have an example of that last point in number 5. The word therefore is the word that I think of as the model or paradigm of a conclusion introducer. So the statement that comes right after it, that is the statement in the B position in number 5, must be the conclusion. Therefore only introduces a conclusion after a premise has already been stated, so A would be a premise. Since introduces a premise, so C would also be a premise. That tells us that in number 5, the conclusion in the B as in boy position is between the two premises. All right, turning now to number 6. 6 is very much like number 5, but there is one absolutely crucial difference. In 5, what came right after the conclusion introduced therefore was another statement, or really a letter that was indicating the position of a statement. In number 6, by contrast, what comes after the conclusion introduced therefore is not a statement. It's a premise introducer. B, then, must be a premise. Now, the conclusion still has to come after therefore, because therefore is a conclusion introducer, and an introducer comes before the thing it introduces. So that means that the conclusion is in the C position. Since B interjected after therefore, the conclusion introducing therefore pushes the conclusion out to the end here in the C position. In number 7, our keyword is the word for. Now, it's very important that we keep the word for distinct from the word therefore. Those do different things in terms of introducing parts of arguments. The word therefore introduces a conclusion. By contrast, the word for introduces a premise whenever it introduces any part of an argument. So B is a premise, and is telling us we're about to get something of the same sort we just got before, the last item on that list. That tells us C is also a premise, meaning by process of elimination that the conclusion must be in the position indicated by the letter A. By the way, the word for only introduces a premise when a conclusion has already been stated. Not all premise introducers work that way, but the word for only introduces a premise or premises after a conclusion has already been stated. All right. Now, in looking at these problems so far, I have not said anything about punctuation. There was some punctuation in these, but the punctuation was really irrelevant to identifying the premises, to identifying the conclusions. Please don't mind my cat Henry meowing in the background here. Again, punctuation was irrelevant in identifying the position of the conclusion in these. There are only 2 introducing phrases where we have to pay attention to punctuation. When we're looking at the phrase given that, and when we're looking at the phrase here's why, we do have to pay attention to the punctuation used because that differentiates whether the phrase is introducing a conclusion or introducing a premise. I'll go over that in numbers 12 and 13 that use given that with you right now, or in a moment as soon as I erase what's on the board. 14 and 15 involve here's why, and I hope that you can do those on your own. Give them a try, and if you have any questions at all about them, please don't hesitate to ask me. But let me erase. When the phrase given that is used to introduce part of an argument, what determines whether it's a premise introducing phrase or a conclusion introducing phrase is whether or not it has a comma immediately after it. You notice that in number 12, there's a comma immediately after the phrase given that. In number 13, there is a comma someplace in there, but there is not a comma immediately after given that. That's the difference that matters. When there is a comma immediately after the phrase given that, we're looking at a conclusion introducing phrase. So in number 12, the statement in the position immediately after given that followed by a comma will be the conclusion. In 13, the fact that there is not a comma right after given that means that it's introducing a premise. So A, the statement right after it, is a premise. And telling us we're about to get the last thing on a list, so B is going to be the same kind of thing as A. In other words, B is going to be another premise. So here the conclusion would be C. And that would be true even if there had not been any comma used in 13. The presence or absence of a comma someplace other than right after the phrase given that is really irrelevant to picking out the conclusion when the phrase given that is used. Okay, I hope that this has been helpful for you, and please feel free to ask me any questions that you have. Soon I'll post a video with the thought processes used to arrive at the answers to some of the problems in practice problem set 1-2. Talk to you soon. Bye for now.